Alright, we're back. It's the 4th. It's time to give my bees some emergency food. If you didn't look at the last video where I did a lift check and found that they are in dire need of food, then you may want to check that out to see what that was about. But the basic premise, I'm going to do what's called a mountain camp method, and this is partially because I'm crunched for time and didn't have time to make fondant or something a little more fancy. And a mountain camp is probably one of the laziest ways to feed your bees during the winter. And what it consists of is a piece of paper, newspaper, and you cover it with a mountain of sugar and make sure it's wet or damp so that the bees can get to it and so that it sort of hardens up inside and they can chew on it and work on it, and that's about it. My very first year as a beekeeper, I did this method because I found the idea of fondant to be a little too intimidating, and it seemed to work just fine. So in a pinch, this is what I'm going to be doing. So I have my red bucket there full of sugar. This is the weakest hive. This is the one that I'm the most concerned about. And they immediately roughed it out at me. They were very upset that I came in, but that's the job. Now the paper isn't a big deal. The bees will chew through the paper. Newspaper is actually a pretty handy tool for a beekeeper. You can use them to make splits and a couple other things. Or actually combining hives, sorry. And in this case, you can just plop it in there and cover it with the sugar. The bees they have plenty of room to get around the paper. It's not a big deal, and they can chew up through the paper. So this isn't going to be a big deal for them at all. So just going to pour sugar straight on top. And then I'm going to moisten it with some water. And that's really all there is to it. Now these two hives here are my splits that I made last year, and this one was always the one that was lagging the most. I decided not to do any combining because it seemed like it was strong enough, but I was willing to take a risk. So I'm not exactly surprised to see that it's struggling right now, but they're still alive, so if they can make it another month and a half, they'll be set up well for spring. So that's what I'm hoping will happen. And if they do die out, well, then I've got this equipment for the splits for next year, which is just fine. Alright, that's all there is to that one. And so now we're going to go to the one that actually had another split, but you'll see the difference between when we open this first hive and this next one. It's pretty substantial how different it is. Now you might be wondering, why am I putting rocks on it? Well, the main reason is when I open these hives, I am breaking their wax and propolis that they use to seal the hive up for winter, which means drafts and things can get in. So by placing the rock on it, I'm just trying to add a little more compression so that things stick back together better without making the bees stress about it, because, well, they're not really going to do any more work right now while it's cold. So this extra bit of pressure may help keep the drafts out. That's all there is for that rock. I won't do this for the telescoping lids because they fit a little bit more snug than these migratory lids, but that's what the rock's for. It's just to help keep that lid down and tight. I don't keep rocks on them almost ever, but since it's the winter, I'm going to put them on just to help out. Now you can see here we got bees all over the lid, we got bees all over the inside. Way more going on in this hive than the previous. And this hive is also pretty mad at me. You can see them just flying up in my face. They're just not happy to see me, but I can understand that. So I just want to get in and get out. Just had to put a little bit of smoke on myself because they were just all over me. And I'm not exactly worried I'm going to get stung in all my gear and everything, but if they were able to sting me, it would be a pretty bad little sting because it meant they got inside of my clothing, which is not a great time. There's a bee saying hey. I'm wearing the camera on my chest, so a bee just landed on the camera itself on my chest. More sugar. And then some water. Like I said, these are the two weaker hives. This hive actually went into the winter with a number of frames of honey, which is why I think it's doing a little bit better now. The other one that's next to it that I started with had some, but I was mostly feeding it very aggressively to try to put weight on it, and I just don't think it got enough. And then with our winter being, either kind of warm and then freezing cold, I think it's just kind of forced them to go through their food a bit faster than they normally would have. And that's part of the beekeeping thing, is just keeping up with the weather and your bees. You can never really just assume things will go a particular way. You have to kind of keep an eye on it. All right, so these are my two hives that I've had the longest that I'm about to do my work on, and these are the ones that I made splits from. One of these hives is from a swarm, and one of them is from a nuke that I combined back with another nuke. I can't remember which is which anymore. I don't remember the lineage. I'd probably have to go back and look at my other videos. But if you want to think about the hives as lineage, these two that I'm looking at right here are the children, and these others with the different lids are the parents. The one on the right is a perfectly healthy hive, but it's never been very productive. The one on the left, that one is absolutely the best hive by a long shot. So if there's one I want to keep alive, it's this one on the left. This is the one that I want to try raising queens from this year and replace the other queens that I have. It's also, when the hive is unhappy, the meanest hive. So this comb here that they've built off the top is called burr comb. When all the other hives were barely getting by, this hive was still producing honey and still producing wax. They're just really productive bees. It's one of the reasons I want to keep them. They're also, when they're happy, the most gentle. They're the most mean when they're unhappy, but they're the most gentle when they are happy. So they're going to get some food too, because if I'm feeding one, I'm going to feed them all. I don't see any reason just to give some to one and not the others. And that way, in case I did miss something, even though these weighed in when I did a lift check, they felt like they were 30 or 40 pounds, which meant they were healthy. I'm still going to give them the food. A lot can happen in a month and a half, so they get the food. Close that right back on up and snug on that lid nice and good, so it hopefully seals up nice. I really should get inner covers for these telescoping lids, because they will glue those lids on, and it's not fun to try to pop those off. An inner cover basically means they'll seal the inner cover but not the lid, so it's a little easier to get into the hive that way. Migratory lids I don't need an inner cover for, but I tried cloth covers and they did not work at all. So I need to get proper inner covers for these with the telescoping lids. It's just frustrating to try to bend these tops off every time. And let's see the lid here. Not much going on. Still got bees everywhere inside of there. Not as much as the other one, but like when I did the lift check, this was still a heavy hive, so the bees might be just down below still. So we're going to go ahead and just get this one started. And these two hives didn't really come after me like the first two did, which is, again, it's an interesting thing. Like, why did those two get so mad and these didn't? My suspicion is these two are fine. They're happy. The other two that I started with are probably fighting for their lives, and that's why they're a little bit testier. So here we go. And even when it's not obvious in this, but when I'm pouring the water on them, that usually causes a number of bees to like come out and check me out. But even in these hives, they're just sort of like, it's fine, don't worry about it. But the other two, the first two, they would just erupt at me again. Just, hey, what are you doing? So there you go, emergency feeding for 4 hives. Now this, I was getting all packed up, and this little bee was just hanging out on my glove. So I thought, no, that'd be neat. I'll just try to film it for a little bit. You can see its little butt wiggling. I think that's just how the bee is breathing. But this little lady just sort of hung out on my hand for a few minutes, and I brought her close to the camera. Unfortunately, didn't focus in on the bee, so she's just blurry. But there are a couple details I was going to point out if it worked out, but it doesn't. But you can see her little abdomen just going to work there. I don't think she was going to sting me at all. She's just checking me out. I don't think that there was any danger for me. Even if I was barehanded, I don't think she would have stung me. She's just sort of exploring and checking everything out, which is pretty neat sometimes when you get that kind of little little thing. You can just check out the bee. You don't have to worry about anything. You're not busy. You're not stressed. You don't have other things going on. You can just sort of watch and check them out.